The winter of 1887 came early to the valley, bringing with it a bone-deep cold that settled into the red earth like a curse. In the shadow of the barren hills, where the land cracked and split from drought and neglect, stood a ranch that time had forgotten. The wooden fences leaned at drunken angles, their posts weathered gray as old bones. Smoke curled from a single chimney, the only sign that anyone still called this desolate place home. Jedediah Hartwell sat by his fireplace, watching the flames dance across split pine logs. At 62, his face bore the map of a hard life, deep lines etched by sun and sorrow, eyes the color of winter sky that had seen too much, his hands, scarred from rope burns and old battles, wrapped around a tin cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The empty chair across from him held shadows and memories, just as it had for the past 15 years. The photograph on the mantel showed a woman with gentle eyes and a boy of maybe 10 summers. Sarah and Thomas, his wife and son, taken by Apache raiders during the uprising of 72. The army had called it a skirmish. Jed called it the day his world ended. He'd been away, riding patrol with the 7th Cavalry, protecting other families while his own burned. He'd mustered out after that, bought this patch of nowhere with his soldier's pension and what Sarah had saved in her butter crock. The ranch barely sustained itself. A few head of cattle, some chickens that laid when they felt like it, and a vegetable garden that fought him every season. But it was quiet here, and quiet was what a man needed when his dreams were full of screaming. The horses in the barn started up a fuss, nickering and stamping. Jed set down his cup and reached for the Winchester propped against the wall. Could be wolves. Could be worse. Out here, 40 miles from the nearest town, trouble came in many forms. He pulled on his coat and stepped into the night. The cold hit him like a fist, stealing his breath. Stars scattered across the black sky like spilled salt, and a sliver of moon cast everything in silver and shadow. The horses were still carrying on, but now he heard something else. Voices, soft and low, moving quiet as his old bones allowed. Jed made his way to the barn. What he saw there stopped him cold. 6 figures huddled against the barn wall, pressed together for warmth. Women, all of them, wrapped in tattered blankets and clothes that had seen too many miles, even in the poor light. He could see they were Apache, the high cheekbones, the dark hair hanging loose and tangled. They looked young, maybe early 20s to mid-30s, though hardship had a way of aging folks before their time. One of them saw him and whispered sharp to the others. They turned as one. 6 pairs of eyes reflecting moonlight like cornered animals. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The Winchester felt heavy in Jed's hands. The tallest one stepped forward, keeping her hands where he could see them. When she spoke, her English came careful and proud, each word chosen with thought. "We mean no harm, old father. We are cold. We are hungry. We have nowhere else to go." "This is private property," Jed said. Though his voice lacked conviction, they looked about ready to fall over. "What are you doing out here?" The woman's chin lifted. Even starved and freezing, she had dignity. "We were cast out, our people." She swallowed hard. "They will not have us back. We came here because we saw your smoke, because we hoped. Hoped for what?" She looked back at the others, then met his eyes straight on. "We need protection. A place. We will work. We will." Her voice cracked like river ice. "We will be wives to you, if you will have us, all of us, or give us a warm place to die. We do not care which anymore." Jed almost dropped the rifle. "You're talking crazy, woman. I'm old enough to be your grandfather. Age means nothing to the desperate." She swayed on her feet, and one of the younger women caught her arm. "Please, just for tonight. We will not last until morning." He looked at them, really looked. Saw the frost forming on their hair, the way they shook like aspens in a storm. Saw how thin they were under those blankets, how their feet were wrapped in rags instead of proper shoes. Whatever they'd done or been accused of, they were fixing to freeze to death on his doorstep. Sarah would have already had them inside, warming by the fire. Sarah would have been heating soup and finding blankets. The thought of his wife twisted something in his chest. "There's a shed around back," he heard himself say. "Got a stove in it, some old horse blankets. You can bed down there tonight? We'll talk come morning." Relief washed over their faces. The tall one nodded. "We thank you. Don't thank me yet, and don't get any ideas about the main house. I'll be watching." He led them to the shed, a sturdy building he'd used for storing tools and feed. The potbelly stove hadn't been lit in months, but it worked well enough. While he got a fire going, the women huddled in the corner, whispering in their own tongue. The sound of it made his jaw tight. Too many memories of similar voices crying out in battle. Once the fire caught, he fetched some blankets from the barn, a bucket of water, and half a loaf of bread from his kitchen. It wasn't much, but it was what he had. The women fell on the food like wolves, tearing it into equal pieces, making sure each got their share. "I'll bring more in the morning," he said, backing toward the door. "There's a bar on the inside. Use it." The tall one looked at him with eyes that held too much knowledge. "You have lost someone to my people." It wasn't a question. Jed's hand tightened on the door handle. "Get some rest." Back in his house, he bolted the door and checked the windows. Old habits dying hard. Sleep wouldn't come. He knew that already. He sat in his chair, rifle across his knees, listening to the wind howl around the corners of his house. Every now and then, he caught the faint sound of voices from the shed, soft sobbing, comforting murmurs, whispered prayers in a language he'd tried hard to forget. 6 Apache women, begging to be his wives. It was madness. He was too old, too tired, too full of ghosts, and yet they were out there, alive and suffering, while Sarah and Thomas were nothing but names on wooden crosses. The fire burned low. Jed added another log and settled back to wait for dawn, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into, and why. For the first time in 15 years, the empty chair across from him didn't seem quite so accusing. Dawn came slow and gray, bringing fresh snow that dusted the ground like flour. Jed hadn't moved from his chair except to tend the fire. When the first pale light touched the windows, he rose, joints protesting, and set about making breakfast. Bacon, beans, and cornbread. Simple fare, but hot and filling. He loaded a tray and headed for the shed, rifle slung over his shoulder. The door opened before he could knock. The tall woman stood there, alert despite what must have been a sleepless night. "Morning," he said, setting the tray on a workbench. "Brought food." The others stirred from their huddle near the stove. In daylight, he could see them better, and what he saw made him uncomfortable. They were beautiful, all of them, in the way wild things were beautiful, untamed and wary. But they were also hurt. One had bruises yellowing on her face. Another kept her arm cradled against her chest. The youngest couldn't be more than 20, with eyes that had seen too much. They ate in silence while Jed leaned against the doorframe. "Finally," he said, "I need to know your names, and why you're really here." The tall one set down her plate. "I am called Naomi. These are my sisters, not by blood, but by circumstance." She pointed to each in turn. "Catherine, who the Mexicans knew as a servant. Teresa, who was accused of betraying our people. Susan, who cannot speak but whose heart speaks loudest. And the twins, Anna and Catherine. Those aren't Apache names. They are the names given to us at the missionary school. Our true names were beaten from us long ago." Naomi's voice held no bitterness, just fact. "We use them now because they are all we have left. And why were you cast out?" Naomi looked at the others, gathering their permission with her eyes. "I was to marry a man older than you, a cruel man who had buried 3 wives already. When I refused, when I ran, I shamed my family. They said I was no longer Apache." Catherine spoke up, her voice soft and accented. "I worked for a trader in Socorro. His wife died, and he wanted more than cooking and cleaning. When I fought him off, he accused me of theft. My people believed him over me." "The soldiers came to our camp often," Teresa added, not meeting his eyes. "They wanted information about the resistance. I knew nothing, but they were persistent. When warriors were caught in an ambush, everyone believed I had warned the army. I hadn't, but... She shrugged. Truth matters little when people need someone to blame. Susan made quick gestures with her hands. Anna translated. She was born without a voice. Some thought it meant the spirits had cursed her, but it was worse after... Anna stopped, glanced at her twin. After what happened to us. Catherine took her sister's hand. We were gathering piñon nuts. 4 cowboys found us. They... Her voice dropped to a whisper. When we survived and returned, the medicine man said we carried bad spirits now, that we would contaminate the tribe. Jed's breakfast sat like lead in his stomach. He'd heard plenty of ugly stories in his time, but hearing them from these women's mouths made them real in a way that set his teeth on edge. So you came here, to ask a stranger, a white stranger, to marry you, all of you. We have tried everything else, Naomi said simply. The towns will not have us. The army wants to send us to the reservation schools. The missionaries want to save our souls while our bodies starve. You are old, yes. You are white, yes. But you gave us shelter when you could have shot us. That is more kindness than we have known in months. I can't marry 6 women. It ain't legal. It ain't proper. Legal and proper are for people who have choices. Naomi stood, gathering the empty plates. We are not asking for love. We are asking for a chance to live. We will work your ranch. We will cook, clean, mend, plant. We will make this place live again. And if you want, companionship. We understand that too. It is better than dying in the cold. Jesus Christ. Jed rubbed his face. You're talking about... I can't even... We shock you. We understand. But please, before you decide, let us prove our worth. 1 month. Let us work for 1 month. If you still want us gone, we will go. He looked at them, these 6 women who'd been chewed up and spit out by a world that had no place for them. Thought about his empty house, his failing ranch, the silence that pressed in on him every night like a burial shroud. The old Johnson cabin sits empty about a quarter-mile south, he heard himself say. Roof's still good, but it needs cleaning. You can stay there. I'll provide food and supplies in exchange for work, but that's all. No talk of marriage or anything else. Understood? Hope lit their faces like sunrise. Understood. Naomi said. He helped them move their few possessions to the cabin. It wasn't much. 2 rooms with a fireplace and a lean-to kitchen. Dust and spider webs covered everything, but the women set to it with a will, sweeping and scrubbing while Jed hauled in firewood and supplies. By afternoon, the place looked almost homely. Catherine had found some old curtains in a trunk and hung them in the windows. Teresa was sorting through the seeds Jed had brought, planning a garden come spring. The twins worked on patching holes in the walls with mud and straw, while Susan drew water from the well, moving with quiet efficiency. You've done this before, Jed observed. Setting up house from nothing? Many times. Naomi said, Apache women learn to make homes wherever we stop, even if only for a night. That evening, they shared supper in his kitchen, the first time he'd had company in years. The women were cautious at first, but warmth and food loosened their tongues. Catherine told a funny story about a rooster that terrorized the Mexican trader's household. The twins sang softly in Apache while washing dishes, their voices blending like water over stones. Later, Jed walked them back to their cabin, carrying a lantern against the dark. At the door, Naomi touched his arm. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is just practical. Nothing more. Of course. But her eyes said she knew better. Good night, Mr. Hartwell. He walked home alone, bootprints crossing in the snow. Behind him, lamplight glowed warm in the cabin windows, and he could hear the soft murmur of women's voices, the sound of life returning to his land. That night, for the first time in 15 years, the empty chair didn't mock him. Instead, it simply waited, patient as always. While outside, the snow fell soft and silent, covering the scars of the past with a promise of something new. Spring came late that year, But when it arrived, it transformed the valley. The women had been there 3 months, and the change in the ranch was nothing short of miraculous. Where before there had been neglect and decay, now there was life and purpose. The garden Teresa had planned was taking shape. Neat rows of corn, beans, and squash in the old Apache way. Catherine had taken over the kitchen garden, coaxing herbs and vegetables from the stubborn soil. The chicken coop, expanded and repaired by the twins, now housed 24 birds that laid regular as clockwork. Jed stood on his porch, watching Susan work with a young colt in the corral. She might not speak, but she had a way with horses that bordered on magic. The colt, wild just weeks ago, now followed her like a puppy. Her hands moved in gentle gestures, and somehow the animals understood. "She says he'll make a good cow pony," Naomi said, joining him on the porch. She'd taken to translating Susan's sign language for him, though he was starting to pick up some on his own. "She's got a gift," Jed admitted. "You all do. Ranch hasn't looked this good since—" He stopped. Old habit of not speaking about the past. "Since your wife was here." Naomi didn't make it a question. The house tells her story. The curtains she made, the garden stones she placed. A woman's hand leaves marks that time cannot erase. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the others work. Then Naomi said, "We need supplies. The flour is low, and Catherine needs proper cooking oil. The general store in town. I'll go." Jed cut her off. He'd been making the supply runs alone, not wanting to subject the women to the town's judgment. "Make me a list. We should come with you." "No, we cannot hide forever, Mr. Hartwell, and you cannot protect us from the world by keeping us locked away." He turned to look at her. In the morning sun, he could see silver threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes that spoke of laughter and sorrow in equal measure. She was handsome rather than pretty, with a strength that reminded him of Sarah in unexpected ways. "They won't be kind," he warned. "When has the world ever been kind to Apache women? We have survived worse than hard looks and harsh words." So they went, all 7 of them in the wagon. Jed had them dress in their best, simple calico dresses Catherine had sewn from fabric he'd bought, hair braided and pinned proper. They looked respectable, even ladylike, but there was no hiding what they were. The moment they rolled into prosperity, the stares started. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Children were pulled closer to their mother's skirts. By the time Jed pulled up at Morrison's general store, half the town seemed to be watching. "Stay close," he murmured, helping them down from the wagon. Inside the store, Tom Morrison's face went from welcoming to stone. "Jed, didn't expect to see you with company. Need supplies." "Tom, same as always." Jed handed over the list. Morrison looked at it without moving. "Don't rightly know if I can fill this. Your shelves look plenty full to me. Not for them, they don't." The temperature in the store seemed to drop 10 degrees. Behind him, Jed felt the women tense. Naomi placed a calming hand on Teresa's arm. "You'll fill my order. Tom, same as you have for 15 years, or I'll take my business to Carson City." "With your Apache harem?" This from Jake Powell, lounging by the pickle barrel, young, mean, and stupid. A dangerous combination. "Heard you were keeping squaws out at your place. Oh man, didn't believe it till now. Mind your tongue, boy." Jake pushed off the barrel, hooking his thumbs in his gun belt. "Or what? You'll have your savages scalp me?" He looked the women over with eyes that made Jed's hand itch for iron. "Though I can see why you'd want to keep them. Must get mighty cold out there. 6 bed warmers must—" Jed's fist caught him square in the mouth. Jake went down hard, scattering a display of soap. He came up spitting blood and reaching for his gun. But Jed already had his Colt out and centered on Jake's chest. "Draw it and I'll kill you where you stand," Jed said, voice calm as discussing weather. "Apologize to these ladies." "Ladies?" Jake laughed, though it came out wet and red. "They're nothing but—" Jed thumbed back the hammer. The click was loud in the silent store. "Sorry," Jake mumbled, not looking at anyone. "Now get out." Jake scrambled to his feet and fled. Jed holstered his weapon and turned back to Morrison. "My order?" The shopkeeper filled it without another word. Others in the store gave them a wide berth, but Jed caught something in a few faces that wasn't entirely hostile. Mrs. Palmer, the minister's wife, gave a small nod. Old Henrik, who'd lost his son to Comanche raiders but still traded fair with everyone, touched his hat brim. "Outside, loading the wagon," Catherine said quietly. "You should not have done that. It will make trouble for you." "Already got trouble," Jed replied. "Might as well have it for a good reason." The ride home was quiet, but that evening, as they gathered for supper, something had changed. The women moved easier around him, smiled more readily. When Susan signed something that made the others laugh, Naomi translated without being asked. "She says you have fast hands for an old man. Not so old I can't handle a pup like Jake Powell." "No," Naomi agreed. And was there something warm in her eyes? Not so old at all. Later, Jed was fixing a harness in the barn when Teresa appeared, carrying a cup of coffee. "Thought you might want this," she said, shy as always. "Thank you." He took the cup, noticed how she lingered. "Something on your mind?" "What you did today. No one has ever defended me like that, not even my own people." "It was nothing. It was everything." She moved closer, and he caught her scent, sage and wood smoke and something uniquely her. "Mr. Hartwell. Jed. Just call me Jed. Jed." His name on her lips sounded like a prayer. "I need to tell you something. About the soldiers. About why my people cast me out. It wasn't what they thought. I never betrayed anyone. But I was fond of one of them. A sergeant who treated me kindly. But I wanted to. And that wanting, that was betrayal enough. Teresa, I'm telling you because I think you should know. I have had feelings for a white man before. And I have them again." She reached up, touched his face where his beard was going silver. Her hand was warm and calloused from work, real and present. For a moment, Jed let himself feel it, the simple human contact he'd denied himself for so long. Then he stepped back. "You're young enough to be my daughter. I'm 32 winters, old enough to know my own mind." But she didn't push. "Thank you for the coffee." She left him in the barn with the cooling cup and racing thoughts. Through the open door, he could see the cabin windows glowing warm in the dusk. 6 women who'd chosen him, of all people, as their chance for survival, who looked at him and saw not an old man haunted by ghosts, but simply a man. He thought of Sarah, wondered what she'd make of all this. Probably laugh at the absurdity of it. Probably tell him to stop being a fool and accept what was offered. But accepting meant opening doors he'd nailed shut. It meant risking the kind of pain that had nearly killed him once before. In the distance, a coyote howled, and its packmates answered. The sound reminded him that nothing in this life was meant to be alone. Even old soldiers deserved a chance at something like peace, something like home, something like love, even if it came in the most unexpected form. The summer heat had settled over the valley like a wool blanket, making the air shimmer and dance. Jed wiped sweat from his brow as he worked on mending the corral fence, trying to focus on the task and not on the growing complexity of his household. It had started small, lingering glances, touches that lasted a heartbeat too long, conversations that veered into dangerous territory. The women had settled into the ranch like they'd always belonged there, but with that comfort came something else, something that kept him awake at night, staring at the ceiling. "You're going to hammer that nail clean through to China," Naomi observed, appearing at his elbow with a water bucket and ladle. Jed looked down at the fence post, where he'd indeed driven the nail far deeper than necessary. "Distracted, I guess." "By what?" She offered him the ladle, and their fingers brushed in the exchange. "You know damn well what." Naomi's lips curved in a smile that made her look years younger. "We are not children. Jed, neither are you. What holds you back? Common sense, decency, The fact that I'm one man and you're 6 women. Apache women have shared husbands before. It is not common, but it happens. When circumstances demand it. This ain't Apache land. This is America. And in America, people do what they must to survive. We see how you look at us. We know you have been alone too long. Why deny what could be? Before he could answer, shouting erupted from the direction of the cabin. They both turned to see Catherine running toward them, hair coming loose from its pins. "Riders coming!" she gasped. "Maybe 10, armed." Jed's blood went cold. He grabbed his rifle from where it leaned against the fence. "Get everyone in the house, bar the door, and stay away from the windows." But Naomi stood her ground. "We will not hide while you face danger alone. This ain't a discussion. No, it is not." She turned to Catherine. "Get the others. Bring the rifles." Within minutes, all 6 women had taken positions. Anna and Catherine at the upstairs windows. Susan on the roof with her keen eyes and steady hands. The others spread through the lower floor. They drilled this. Jed realized, while he'd been out working, they'd prepared for exactly this moment. The riders came into view, dust billowing around their horses. Jake Powell led them, his face still showing the bruises from their encounter in town. With him rode his usual gang of troublemakers and a few faces Jed didn't recognize. Hard men with harder eyes. They pulled up just outside rifle range. Jake stood in his stirrups. "Hartwell, got business with you." "State it from there." Jed called back. "Town council met last night. Decided we don't need no Indian lovers bringing trouble to prosperity. You got 2 choices, old man. Send them savages packing, or we'll do it for you." "Third choice," Jed replied. "You turn around and ride out." Jake laughed. "You can't fight all of us." A shot cracked from the roof. Jake's hat flew off his head. A neat hole punched through the crown. Susan worked the lever of her rifle and settled back into position. "Seems I ain't fighting alone," Jed observed mildly. The riders milled nervously. Fighting one old man was different from facing 7 rifles, especially when the shooters had cover and elevation. "This is your last warning, Hartwell!" Jake snarled, but the bravado had leaked out of his voice. "No, boy, it's yours. You come at my home, threaten my family, and I'll put you in the ground. Every last one of you." "Your family?" One of the older riders, a man named Corbett, pushed forward. "You calling them Apaches your family?" "I am." "You marry them savages, Hartwell?" Jed felt the weight of the moment, the pivot point where everything would change. Through the window, he could see Teresa's face, tense but trusting. From the roof came the soft sound of Susan chambering another round. "Every last one," he said clearly. "Before God and man, they're my wives, and any man who wants to dispute that can do it over iron." The silence stretched taut. Then Corbett did something unexpected. He smiled. "Well, hell, about time someone put Jake in his place. The boy's been spoiling for a fight since his daddy died, but I got no quarrel with a man protecting his household, however unusual it might be." He turned his horse. 2 others followed. The odds were shifting. Jake's face went purple. "You cowards! They're nothing but—" Another shot from Susan. This time the bullet kicked up dust inches from Jake's horse. The animal danced sideways, nearly unseating him. "Next one won't miss," Jed warned. They broke then, wheeling their horses and riding hard for town. Jake shouted threats over his shoulder, but they were empty words thrown to the wind. Jed stayed in position until the dust settled, then slowly lowered his rifle. The women emerged from the house, gathering around him with faces that mixed relief and something else, pride, maybe, or ownership. "You claimed us," Naomi said softly. "Before witnesses." "I did. Do you mean to honor that claim?" He looked at them. These 6 women who'd transformed his dying ranch into something living, who'd stood ready to fight beside him without hesitation, who looked at him not with the worship of young girls for a protector, but with the clear-eyed choice of women who knew their own minds. "Inside," he said roughly. "All of you. We need to talk." They gathered in the main room, the women settling naturally into what had become their usual places. Jed stood by the fireplace, trying to find words for something that defied words. "I'm 62 years old," he began. "I've got more yesterdays than tomorrows. You could have something better." "Where?" Catherine interrupted. "In town, where they spit when we pass, on the reservation, where we would be reminded daily of our shame, with young men who would see us as trophies or burdens. You offer us respect," Teresa added. "You see us as we are, not as what others say we are." "But 6 wives. How would that even work?" The twins exchanged glances. Anna spoke carefully. "We have talked of this. We are not jealous women. What happened to us? It burned that away. We want safety, companionship, gentleness. These matter more than exclusive possession." Susan signed something. Naomi translated. "She says love shared is not love diminished, like light from a lamp. It fills whatever space it is given." Jed sank into his chair, overwhelmed. "This is madness." "Yes," Naomi agreed. "But it is our madness to choose." She moved to kneel beside his chair, taking his weathered hand in both of hers. "We do not ask for grand passion. We ask for a chance to belong somewhere, to someone. You have been alone with your ghosts long enough. Let us help carry them." One by one, the others joined her, Catherine with her quiet grace, Teresa with her burning intensity, Susan with her gentle silence. The twins with their shared sorrow transformed into shared strength. 6 women offering not just themselves, but a future he'd never imagined. "Before witnesses, you called us wives," Naomi reminded him. "Will you make it truth?" Jed closed his eyes, seeing Sarah's face one last time, but instead of sorrow, he imagined understanding in her beloved features. Permission, even. Sarah had always been practical about matters of the heart. "God help me," he whispered. "Yes." The kiss happened without planning, Catherine first, soft and tentative, like testing the temperature of water. Then the dam broke. Not passion yet, but promise, connection. The first careful steps of a dance none of them quite knew the steps to. That night, for the first time in 15 years, Jed Hartwell did not sleep alone. The details mattered less than the simple fact of human warmth, of not being isolated in his grief, of choosing life, however unconventional, over the slow death of solitude. Outside, coyotes sang to the rising moon, and the ranch settled into sleep with all its windows glowing warm against the dark. The news spread through the valley like wildfire in dry grass. Within a week, everyone from Prosperity to Carson City had heard about Jed Hartwell and his 6 Apache wives. The reactions ranged from scandalized to furious, with a few quietly admiring voices drowned out by the majority. Reverend Caldwell rode out on a Tuesday morning, his black coat dusty from the trail. Jed met him on the porch, coffee cup in hand. "Jedediah," the minister began without preamble, "I've come to talk sense into you. Save your breath, Reverend. My mind's made up. This arrangement is ungodly. It's against everything decent society stands for." Jed took a slow sip of coffee. "Decent society cast these women out to die. I took them in, which sounds more godly to you. But to claim them all as wives—" Abraham had Sarah and Hagar. Jacob had Leah and Rachel and their handmaids. Seems the good books got plenty of men with multiple wives. Caldwell's face reddened. That was different. Those were different times. These are different times, too. Times when a man protects what's his, however unusual it might be. From inside came the sound of laughter, the twins teaching Susan a card game while Catherine hummed at her sewing. Normal sounds of a household at peace. "The town council is meeting tonight," Caldwell warned. "They're talking about cutting you off. No supplies, no services. They might even petition the territorial governor." "Let them talk." Jed stood, ending the conversation. "Now, if you'll excuse me, Reverend, I've got work to do." But the minister was only the first. Over the next days, a parade of visitors came to plead, threaten, or gawk. Tom Morrison arrived to say he'd been pressured to stop selling to them. Mrs. Palmer brought a basket of preserves and whispered that not everyone disagreed with Jed's choices. Even Sheriff Coleman made the trip, looking uncomfortable. "I got no legal grounds to interfere," the lawman said. "Technically, you're not breaking any laws, but Jake Powell's stirring up something fierce. Him and his boys are talking about riding out here again, this time with more men. I appreciate the warning. Sheriff, Jed, I knew Sarah. She was a good woman. You really think she'd approve of this?" For the first time, Jed's composure cracked. "Sarah's been dead 15 years. She don't get a vote anymore." That night, the women gathered in the main house for supper, but the mood was somber. They'd heard the threats, felt the weight of the town's judgment pressing down. "We have brought you nothing but trouble," Naomi said quietly. "Perhaps it would be better." "Stop." Jed's voice was sharp. "Anyone talks about leaving, they can sleep in the barn. But the danger? There's always been danger. Difference is, now I got something worth fighting for again." A rider approached as they were clearing the table. Everyone tensed, hands moving toward weapons. But it was only Henrik, the old traitor. He dismounted slowly, favoring his bad leg. "Evening. Jed, ladies." He touched his hat brim. "Mind if I come in?" They gathered in the parlor, Henrik accepting coffee with hands that shook slightly with age. "I'll speak plain," he said. "The town meeting was tonight. They voted to embargo you. No supplies, no services. Anyone caught trading with you faces the same." The women exchanged worried glances, but Henrik wasn't finished. "Course, they can't control everyone. My freight wagons will still stop by, long as you need them. The Martinez brothers, too. They remember when you helped them with those rustlers. And Doc Hartman says he'll come if called. Town be damned." "Why?" Teresa asked. "Why help us?" Henrik was quiet for a long moment. "I lost my boy to Comanche raiders in '71. Spent years hating every Indian I saw. Then I met a Paiute woman dying of fever on the trail. Could have left her, almost did, but something made me stop. Give her water?" He stared into his coffee. "She lived 3 days. In that time, she told me about her son, killed by white soldiers. Same age as mine, same smile. Way she described him made me realize grief don't care about skin color." He stood to leave. "What you're doing ain't conventional, but neither is kindness in this hard world. You need anything, you send word." After he left, a strange mood settled over the house. The women moved with new purpose, as if the town's rejection had freed something in them. Catherine and Teresa reorganized the pantry, planning for lean times. The twins worked on reinforcing the shutters. Susan cleaned and oiled every rifle in the house. Naomi found Jed on the porch, watching the stars. "You are troubled. They'll come eventually. Jake won't let this stand. Then we will be ready." She settled beside him, close enough that he could feel her warmth. "I need to tell you something about being a wife. Naomi, listen, among my people, a wife is not property. She is a partner. She keeps her own mind, her own strength. We 6, we have decided how to be wives to you." "Decided?" "Each of us will come to you as we choose. When we choose, no jealousy, no counting nights. Catherine needs gentleness. She will seek you when her heart is quiet. Teresa burns bright. She will come when the fire is high. Susan speaks with her hands and body. The twins," she smiled, "they share everything. They always have. And you, I am the eldest. I come to make sure you do not forget you are loved." She took his hand, calloused from years of work. "Tonight, it is my turn." The next morning brought smoke on the horizon. Not the ranch, one of the line shacks Jed used during Roundup. By the time they reached it, nothing remained but charred timbers and a message scratched in the dirt. "Leave or burn. Cowards." Anna spit. "They strike at empty buildings in the night." But Jed read the threat clear enough. This was just the beginning. They spent the day preparing, moving livestock closer to the main buildings, filling water barrels, checking sight lines from the windows. The women worked without complaint, efficient as any military unit. That evening, as they gathered for supper, Jed looked around the table at these 6 remarkable women who'd chosen to stand with him against the world. Catherine caught his eye and smiled, flour still dusting her cheek from making bread. Teresa was arguing with the twins about the best placement for the water barrels, gesturing wildly. Susan signed something that made Naomi laugh, a rich sound that filled the room. This was family, unconventional, complicated, probably doomed, but family nonetheless. "I need to say something," Jed announced. The conversation stopped. "If they come in force, if it looks bad, I want you to run. Take the horses and—" "No!" 6 voices in unison, firm as granite. "We stand together," Naomi said simply. "That is what family does." Outside, coyotes called to each other across the darkness. But inside, the lamps burned bright, pushing back the night, and for these few precious hours, they were just a family sharing a meal, pretending tomorrow's troubles were still far away. Life at the ranch settled into new rhythms despite the shadow of threat hanging over them. The women had transformed more than just the buildings. They'd brought ritual and tradition that made each day feel purposeful rather than merely survived. Mornings began with Susan on the roof, watching the horizon while the others prepared breakfast. The twins tended the expanded garden, their hands coaxing life from soil Jed had thought exhausted. Catherine had turned the summer kitchen into her domain, filling the air with scents of baking bread and simmering stews. Teresa managed the livestock with surprising skill, while Naomi kept the books and planned for winter. It was during one of these peaceful mornings that everything changed. Jed was repairing a wagon wheel when he heard Anna's scream from the garden. He ran, rifle in hand, to find her kneeling beside Catherine, who lay still among the tomato plants. "She just fell," Anna sobbed. "We were working and she made a sound and fell." Doc Hartman arrived within hours, Henrik having ridden hard to fetch him despite the town's embargo. The old physician examined Catherine with gentle hands while the family waited in tense silence. "Exhaustion," he finally pronounced. "Malnutrition from before. Catching up. She needs rest, proper food, and—" he hesitated. "She's with child, about 3 months along." The room went still. Anna gripped her sister's hand, tears streaming. "Those men, what they did to us. She never said, but I knew something was wrong." "Will she be all right?" Jed asked, voice rough. "With care, yes, but she can't work like she has been. None of you should be working this hard, given what you've been through." After the doctor left, they gathered around Catherine's bed. She was awake now, eyes hollow with fear. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I thought it had passed. I thought I was wrong." "No sorry," Jed said firmly. "This child will be raised with love. That's all that matters." Catherine began crying then, great heaving sobs that seemed to come from her soul. Anna held her, rocking gently, while the others formed a protective circle around them. That night, Teresa came to Jed's room. "I need to tell you something," she said, standing by the door as if ready to flee. "About Catherine's baby, about how we see it. It's an innocent. That's how I see it. Among our people, children belong to the clan, not just the parents. This baby, it will have 6 mothers and 1 father, if you'll allow it." Jed pulled her into his arms. "I'd be honored." Their kiss was different this time, desperate, affirming life in the face of darkness. When clothing fell away, it was with purpose beyond desire. They were creating something new from the ashes of their separate griefs. Later, as Teresa slept beside him, Jed stared at the ceiling thinking about the strange turns life took. A year ago he'd been alone, waiting to die. Now he had 6 wives, a baby coming, and more purpose than he'd felt in 15 years. The attack came 3 nights later. Susan spotted them first, riders approaching without lanterns, moving slow through the darkness. Her warning gave them time to take positions. But Jed's heart sank when he saw the numbers. At least 20 men, maybe more. But Jake Powell hadn't come alone with hired guns this time. He'd brought others, men with grudges against Indians, men who'd lost family in the wars, men who just liked violence. They surrounded the house, torches casting dancing shadows. "Hartwell," Jake's voice carried across the yard. "Last chance. Send them out and we'll let you leave alive. Go to hell, boy." Have it your way. Boys, burn them out. The first torch sailed through the air toward the barn. Susan's rifle cracked, and the torchbearer spun and fell. Then everything exploded into chaos. Gunfire erupted from both sides. Windows shattered. Men screamed. The women fired with deadly accuracy. Their positions well chosen, but there were too many attackers. Jed saw riders heading for the cabin where Catherine lay recovering. "The twins' cabin!" he shouted. Naomi and Catherine were already moving, cutting across the yard through the gunfire. Jed tried to cover them, but saw Naomi stumble, clutching her side. "No!" He started toward her. But Teresa grabbed him. "I'll go. Keep firing." The battle raged. The barn caught fire despite their efforts, casting hellish light across the yard. Susan had abandoned the roof, driven down by smoke. The twins fired steadily from the main house, tears streaming as they watched their garden trampled by horses. Then, through the chaos, came a sound that made everyone pause, a bugle, clear and military precise. It echoed across the valley. "What the hell?" someone shouted. Over the ridge came riders in blue, a cavalry patrol, guidons snapping in the wind from the burning barn. At their head rode Captain Samuel Morrison, Tom Morrison's son, whom Jed had served with years before. "Stand down!" Morrison's voice cracked like a whip. "By order of the United States Army, stand down!" Jake wheeled his horse. "This ain't Army business. Attacking civilians is always Army business." Morrison's men spread out, rifles ready. "Anyone fires another shot, we'll cut you down." The attackers wavered, then broke. They fled into the darkness, leaving their dead and wounded behind. Jake Powell was among the last to run, but not before Morrison called out, "Powell, you're under arrest. Surrender or be hunted." Jake kept riding. In the aftermath, Jed found Naomi lying in Catherine's arms, blood seeping between her fingers where she pressed against the wound. Doc Hartman worked frantically, the cavalry having escorted him. "Just a graze," Naomi said, trying to smile. "I've had worse." "Don't talk," Jed ordered, holding her hand. Morrison appeared at his elbow. "Got your message, Jed. Came as fast as we could." "My message?" "The one Henrik brought. Said you were harboring women rescued from Mexican slavers, and local criminals were threatening them." Morrison's eyes glinted. Funny how those Apache women became Mexican captives in the official report. Jed understood. Morrison was giving them cover, a story the law could accept. "Sam, you saved my life at Antietam. Jed, this makes us even." He looked around at the women, tired and blood-stained but unbroken. "These your wives?" "Everyone." Morrison nodded slowly. "The old ways are changing. Maybe that's not all bad." He turned to his sergeant. "Post guards, anyone comes near this ranch without permission, arrest them." Dawn found them exhausted but alive. The barn was gone, but the house stood. More importantly, they all survived. Even Naomi's wound proved minor, though she'd milk it for sympathy for weeks. Catherine, who'd insisted on helping despite her condition, sat in the kitchen holding a rifle she'd never had to fire. "The baby kicked," she said wonderingly. "During the fight, like it was saying, 'I'm here, I'm fighting too.'" "Apache from the start," Anna said, kissing her sister's forehead. Jed looked around at his family, bloodied but not beaten, stronger for having stood together. Outside, soldiers patrolled his land. The town might never accept them, but they'd proven they wouldn't be moved. "We need a new barn," he said finally. "We'll build it," Teresa said. "Together, together," the others echoed. And in that moment, with smoke still rising from the ruins and dawn painting the sky pink, Jed Hartwell knew he was finally home. The presence of soldiers changed everything and nothing, while the blue coats patrolled the ranch's borders, keeping the worst of the troublemakers at bay. The town's embargo held firm. Most folks wanted nothing to do with Jed Hartwell and his Apache wives, soldiers or no soldiers. But isolation bred resilience. The ranch became its own world, self-sufficient by necessity. The new barn rose from the ashes of the old, built with lumber that Henrik smuggled in, and hands that worked together despite their differences. Catherine, heavy with child now, directed from a chair, her architectural eye ensuring the structure would last. It was on a crisp October morning that the delegation arrived. Not townspeople this time, but Apache, a band of reservation Indians led by an elderly man whose face was carved from stone and time. Susan saw them first, her frantic signing bringing everyone running. The women froze at the sight of their own people, emotions playing across their faces like storm clouds. "I am Joseph Crowfeather," the old man said in careful English. "These women belong to my band." "They belong to no one but themselves," Jed replied, standing firm despite being outnumbered. Crowfeather studied him with eyes that had seen too much. "You are the white man who claims 6 wives." "I am, and they chose this?" "Ask them yourself." The old man spoke in Apache, his words flowing like water over stones. Naomi stepped forward to answer, her chin high despite the arm still in a sling from her wound. The conversation went on for some time, voices rising and falling. Jed caught fragments: shame, tradition, survival. The other women joined in, even Susan with her eloquent hands. At one point, Teresa spat words that made several of the Apache men reach for weapons, only to be stopped by Crowfeather's raised hand. "Finally," the old man turned back to Jed. "They say you treat them with honor, that you defend them, that you—" He paused, searching for words. "That you see them as human, not as Apache or women, but as human. That's all anyone should be seen as." Crowfeather was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pouch and pulled out a small leather bag. "This is sacred earth from our homeland. If they choose to stay with you, they should have this, to remember who they are." He handed the bag to Naomi, who accepted it with tears streaming down her face. "We will not come again," Crowfeather said. "In the eyes of the people, they are dead, but—" His weathered face softened slightly. "Perhaps there are worse fates than death. Perhaps there is rebirth." After the Apache left, the women were subdued. They gathered in the kitchen, passing the leather bag between them, each taking a pinch of earth to taste. "He was my uncle," Teresa said quietly. "He taught me to track when I was small. I saw no recognition in his eyes. We knew this would be the price." Naomi reminded them, "We chose it, and would choose again," Catherine added firmly. That evening, as they prepared for the first frost, Anna went into labor with Catherine. It was too early, the baby not due for weeks yet. Doc Hartman couldn't come, the embargo extending even to medical care, so they did what women had always done. They managed. Susan boiled water while Catherine prepared clean cloths. Naomi and Teresa took turns supporting Anna through the pains. Jed paced outside like every expectant father since time began, jumping at every cry. Catherine held her sister's hand, whispering prayers in Apache and English both. The twins had always been mirrors of each other, and now one labored to bring forth life while the other waited her turn. The baby came with the dawn, small but fierce, his cry piercing the morning air like a war whoop. A son, perfect despite his early arrival. "He needs a name," Anna said, exhausted but radiant. "Samuel," Jed suggested. "After the captain who saved us." "Samuel Crow, Feather Hartwell," Catherine added. "So he knows all parts of who he is." They were passing the baby around, each woman blessing him in their way, when riders appeared on the horizon. Not soldiers this time, townspeople. Jed reached for his rifle, but Naomi stopped him. "Look closer." It was women, a dozen of them, led by Mrs. Palmer and, surprisingly, Tom Morrison's wife. They came bearing bundles and baskets, their faces set with determination. "Mrs. Hartwell." "Mrs." Palmer said, addressing Naomi. "We've come to help with the baby." The Apache women stood frozen, uncertain. It was Mrs. Morrison who broke the silence. "What the men do is their business, but no woman should face childbirth alone, and no baby should suffer for the prejudices of their elders." She held out a bundle. "I brought clothes, my Samuel's from when he was small." One by one, the town women entered the house. Some were clearly uncomfortable, but they'd come anyway. They brought food, medicine, advice. They cooed over the baby and shared their own birthing stories. For a few hours, the divisions of race and scandal fell away, leaving only women caring for women. "You're Catherine." "Mrs." Morrison said quietly to Jed. "She's close to her time, too?" "Another month," Doc thinks. "I'll come. When it's time, send word. I'll come." After they left, the house felt different. Not accepted exactly, but no longer entirely rejected. The baby slept in Anna's arms, blissfully unaware of the boundaries his birth had begun to cross. "Change comes slow," Naomi observed, watching the dust settle from the wagons. "But it comes." That night, they held a celebration of sorts. Jacob Martinez had smuggled in a bottle of good whiskey, and they toasted the baby's health. The women sang Apache lullabies and Christian hymns blending into something new. Susan danced, her movements telling stories of children yet to come. Jed found himself on the porch with Catherine, watching stars appear in the darkening sky. "No regrets?" he asked. She considered carefully. "I regret the pain that brought us here, but here itself? No, this is home now. Even with all the trouble? Especially with the trouble." She smiled, transforming her usually serious face. "Easy love is shallow love. What we build here, in defiance of the world, this has deep roots." Inside, laughter erupted as Anna tried to show Teresa how to change a diaper. The baby's cries joined the chaos, and Naomi's voice rose above it all, directing and organizing with the skill of a general. "We need more rooms," Catherine observed. "More cribs. This is just the beginning." Jed felt something loosen in his chest, the last bonds of his old grief finally letting go. Sarah and Thomas would never return, but life had, different than expected, complicated beyond imagining, but life nonetheless. "Then we'd better get building," he said. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Jake Powell was still out there, nursing his wounds and his hate. The town's acceptance was fragile at best. Winter was coming, and they had mouths to feed and babies to keep warm. But tonight, with his strange and wonderful family safe under his roof, with new life sleeping peaceful in loving arms, Jed Hartwell was content. He'd spent years as the walking dead. Now, finally, he was among the living. Years had a way of changing things. The ranch that had once been dying now thrived with life in every corner. 3 more babies had joined little Samuel, Catherine's daughter Mary, Teresa's son James, and Catherine's twins Peter and Paul. The sound of children's laughter had replaced the silence that once haunted these walls. Jed sat on the porch, watching 5-year-old Samuel help his mothers in the garden. The boy moved between languages as easily as breathing. Apache with Susan's signs, Spanish with Catherine, English with everyone. He was the bridge between worlds, beloved by all. "Papa Jed!" Mary came running, her dark braids flying. "Mama Anna says, come quick, important!" In the kitchen, all 6 women were gathered, faces serious. On the table lay an official-looking document. "What's this about?" Jed asked. Naomi pushed the paper toward him. Henrik brought it. The territorial governor issued a decree. All common-law marriages must be registered or dissolved within 6 months. "They're trying to force us apart," Teresa said bitterly. Jed read through the document, his frown deepening. "Says here, only monogamous unions will be recognized. The rest must choose." "After 7 years?" Catherine's voice shook. "After our children, our home." "We knew this day might come," Naomi said quietly. "The question is, what do we do?" They sat in heavy silence. Outside, the children played, unaware their world balanced on a knife's edge. "I'll leave," Anna said suddenly. "Register the marriage to Catherine." "She was first." "No," Catherine interrupted. "We came together. We stay together. But the law, hang the law." Jed's voice was steel. "We've built something here. I won't let paper pushers destroy it." Susan signed rapidly. Naomi translated. "She says love cannot be divided by documents. We make our own truth." That night, Jed found himself unable to sleep. He walked through the house, pausing at each doorway. In one room, the twins slept curled together as they had since birth. In another, Catherine sang softly to the babies. Teresa sat by the window, keeping watch as she often did, her rifle close at hand. 7 years. 7 years of shared struggles and joys, of building something that shouldn't exist but did, of proving that love came in many forms, all of them valid. In the morning, he gathered everyone. "I've decided," he announced. "We're going to town, all of us, and we're going to tell them exactly what they can do with their decree." The women exchanged glances. "Jed," Naomi warned, "this could bring trouble. Trouble's been our companion from the start. One more dance won't kill us." They prepared carefully. Best clothes. Children scrubbed and dressed neat. The wagon was decorated with flowers from the garden. They looked like what they were, a family heading to town for a special occasion. The main street of prosperity fell silent as they passed. 7 years had changed the town too. Some of the old hostility remained. But there was curiosity now, even grudging respect. The Hartwell Ranch produced the best horses in the valley. Their vegetables fed half the town through Henrik's store. The women had nursed sick neighbors through fever, shared their harvest with struggling families. They pulled up at the courthouse. Sheriff Coleman, grayer now, but still wearing his star, met them at the door. "Jed, ladies, you hear about the decree? We are... Judge Watson's waiting. Fair warning, he's not sympathetic to irregular arrangements." We'll see about that." The courtroom was packed. Word had spread. And half the town had come to witness. Judge Watson, a stern man with steel spectacles, looked over the document Jed presented. "Mr. Hartwell, you understand the law requires you to choose one wife. The others must be registered as household help. I understand what the law says. Judge, I'm here to register all 6 marriages." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Watson's face darkened. "That's not possible. The law clearly states. The law is wrong. Mr. Hartwell." "No, Judge, you'll hear me out." Jed stood, addressing not just Watson, but the entire room. 7 years ago, 6 women came to my door, cast out and dying. We built a life together. We've raised children, worked the land, contributed to this community. We've asked nothing from anyone but the right to live in peace." He looked at each woman in turn. "Naomi keeps our books and manages our business. Catherine feeds us and teaches our children. Teresa protects us and tends our stock. Susan trains our horses and speaks truths without words. Anna and Catherine bring music and beauty to our days. Each is irreplaceable. Each is my wife in every way that matters." "The law," Watson began. "The law once said these women weren't fully human." Jed interrupted. "The law once said I could own them like cattle. The law changes. Judge, it grows. Maybe it's time for it to grow again." Old Mrs. Palmer stood up in the gallery. "Judge Watson." "May I speak?" Watson looked irritated but nodded. 7 years ago, I thought Jed Hartwell had lost his mind, but I've watched this family. I've seen them care for each other, raise good children, help their neighbors. If that's not marriage, all of it, then what is? Tom Morrison stood next. "The Hartwell Ranch has brought prosperity to prosperity. Their horses, their crops, their trade, all because 7 people work as one. Why break what's not broken? One by one, others stood, others. Not everyone. Jake Powell's faction still glowered from the back. But enough. Neighbors who'd been helped. Merchants who'd profited from fair trade. Women who'd been welcomed during childbirth crises regardless of past prejudices." Judge Watson looked increasingly uncomfortable. "The law is clear." "Then change it," someone called out. "Or ignore it. Wouldn't be the first time." Watson gabbled for order. "Mr. Hartwell, I cannot legally register 6 marriages. However," he paused, choosing words carefully, "if you were to register a business partnership with 6 equal partners who happen to share a household and raise children collectively, well, that's a different matter." "A business partnership?" Naomi asked. "The Hartwell Ranch Corporation. 7 equal shareholders." What you do in your private household is private. It wasn't what they'd wanted, but it was something. Legal protection, recognition of sorts. Jed looked at his wives, saw acceptance in their faces. "We'll take it," he said. The paperwork was completed with the whole town watching. As they signed, all 7 of them, even Susan making her careful mark, something shifted in the room. Not full acceptance, perhaps, but acknowledgement. They existed. They were real. They would endure. Outside. Samuel ran to them, followed by the other children. "Did we win, Papa Jed?" Jed scooped him up. This boy who carried Apache strength and frontier determination in equal measure. "We won enough, son. We won enough." As they loaded into the wagon, Sheriff Coleman approached. "Jake Powell's been seen near the border. Might want to stay watchful. We always are, Sheriff, but thank you." The ride home was quiet but content. As they crested the hill overlooking their valley, the ranch spread below them. The house expanded with new rooms, the barn strong and solid, gardens green with promise, children and chickens and life everywhere. "Look what we built," Catherine said softly. "What we're still building," Teresa corrected. That evening, they held their own ceremony. Not legal, but real, under the oak tree they'd planted the first year, with children as witnesses and stars as congregation. They spoke vows to each other, not of ownership but of partnership, not of exclusion but of inclusion, not of limits but of possibility. Susan signed her vows, and Naomi spoke them aloud. "Where you go, I go. Your joys are my joys, your sorrows are my sorrows. In this life we choose each other again and again, until the last sunset." They danced then, all of them together, while Samuel played his wooden flute and baby James clapped chubby hands. The ranch house glowed with lamplight, throwing golden squares across the yard where once there had been only darkness. Jed Hartwell, veteran of wars both external and internal, looked at his family, strange, wonderful, impossible, and absolutely real. He'd thought his life ended with Sarah and Thomas. He'd been wrong. It had just been waiting to begin again, in ways he never could have imagined. "No regrets?" Naomi asked, echoing Catherine's question from years before. "None," Jed said, and meant it. Not a single one. Under the vast frontier sky, 7 souls who should never have found each other continued their dance, writing a story that didn't fit any traditional telling but was theirs. Completely and irrevocably theirs. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Thank you all for listening to this story from the Wild West. I'm curious, where in the world are you listening from? Please drop a comment below and let us know. Don't forget to subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales from the American frontier. And share your thoughts about this unconventional love story. What did you think of Jed and his 6 wives? Your comments and discussions make our campfire circle complete.